Okay, welcome to the Swing Trading with Cycles channel. We're going to do our update today, December 30th, on uranium. We're going to look at a few specific names, look at where they are in their respective cycles, and we'll also just do a quick recap of what we might expect for 2023, since this is the last trading day of 2022. Market actually just closed. So let's first look at the two-panel chart. So I have UEC here on the left-hand side, and VTI, which is the VTI is the total stock market fund ETF. It's a Vanguard fund. It's meant to capture the entire U.S. stock market, so much broader than just the S&P. But it's the same chart either way, like this versus the S&P more or less. But I wanted to just show a broader representation. So if we think about where the year started. So let's just put a vertical line through that really quickly. So let's just call it, what was that? There, that week. And we know it was that week because we know the market peaked. The S&P did at least. And so clearly here, VTI did as well on January 1st. So you can see drawing that line here shows you very clearly UEC. And we're just using this as a representative example. Obviously, it's not all of uranium. But as an example, it went on to make a higher high, right? Much higher high than where it closed on the third, and more importantly, higher than this high as well. Whereas the S&P has been in a down, or I should say the total stock market, just general equities, which obviously UEC, this is like in some ways uranium stocks would be encapsulated in this, just obviously a really small share. But this is your like very, very classic downtrend, right? Like, these are your swing highs, right? Just to be really clear. And I say this, this is a uranium video. I'm talking about the broader stock market because this is going to impact this, right? Like we managed to have this crazy nice rally even while this was in a downtrend. And that's important to know. But it's also important to know that, this thing is just cascading lower, just to draw it, just to be really clear. This is like you look in the textbook and it's your class. This would be your example. This kind of faked people out because it made a higher high above here, right? But then eventually collapsed. And so your expectation is that, right? And then it's a question of how much more of this do we get? How like is this next leg lower that we're experiencing right now? Is this the final leg? How high a bounce do we get? Well, in other words, how high is the lower high, right? And so what you have for something like UEC after this rally here, you can see has just been like a coil, which I think you could probably say similar things about. CCJ was maybe a little bit idiosyncratic. So where is January 1st? Somewhere around there, right? So same kind of idea as UEC. So it went on to rally again, even while the market was sort of drifting lower. This is kind of an epic double top here, obviously. And again, you have kind of this consolidation. So all that to say, know the broader conditions under which one is potentially buying. Like I'm not buying anything very heavy right now, just in general, I guess is the point. So let's start with CCJ. We're going to look through a few different names. So we talked about in our last video, if you haven't seen that, I'm going to have a pinned tweet with, so you can easily find the playlist for all uranium videos and you can look at them in chronological order. It'll also have an overview of cycles so that you can get up to speed on that, especially if you're new to the channel. And also a primer on how to understand swing lows and swing highs. Super important. Swing lows are how swing lows are how uptrends begin. Swing highs are how downtrends begin. And we talk about these constantly on this channel. And so looks like we have our daily cycle low here. And so 1, 2, 3, 4. So we have a high here on day 4, 5, 6. So it's day 7 potentially with a high on day 4 so far. Now, this is a bullish looking candle. And I say just the point is any candle can look bullish, but doesn't really matter unless you get follow through, right? And so we need to see some follow through in the next couple of days going into the new year, something like that to make a higher high. Now, this could obviously still be a fake out. We still need to get above kind of this chasm. This is still very bearish. This is essentially a large bear flag within this downtrend. So that's our daily picture. Potentially day 7, day 4 top. And this signals that we may have a weekly cycle low. This was from our previous video, how we're we could see an early top. So that's important. I mean, this is feeble so far. Let's acknowledge, again, you have this big candle. And so nothing really matters until we get above that high, which is 23.91. So call it 24 bucks. So we'll see how that goes. And let's see. The low was 22.94, 21.20. Right. So potentially this would be week one, right? If we had our ICL that week, which is exactly 25 weeks actually, right? I think that's what this is telling us, right? Yeah. Yeah, and a high on week 10, low on week 25. So that gives you a decently left translated weekly cycle. Now the question always is, what's the character of the next weekly cycle going to be? Because, is it going to be left translated again? Again, I guess this was not a bad rally if you could have sold close to the top, like maybe after you got this swing high. So potentially week one here, not a great close with this upper wick, but we're going to have to see. That means the first week of the year will be an inside candle. It will open as an inside candle most likely. So it'll be inside this range here, the high of 23.06 and a low of 22.29. So you want to watch for that next week. That's CCJ. Let's look through these other names. We'll actually zoom down to Fission 3.0 and UEC because those are, and Fission Uranium as well. That was looking pretty bullish. So Fission Uranium, that thing has already moved, a monster move already, right? Like moved from a low of like 5 cents all the way up to 25 cents. Then pulled back here about 30%. This may be your daily cycle low here. And this would be day 7. So actually the same count as CCJ. Not a surprise, not a coincidence. Also the same idea that there's a high on day 4 so far, and this needs to make a new high. So that high on day 4 is 24.5 cents basically. And we're down here at 22.6. So yeah, we're about what is that? So that would be like, call it 2 cents below. So that's about 10% ish on a 20 cent issue. So this could be interesting. Also very small market cap. So watching this one here, obviously not great that the day was red. That's not good. And what does the weekly look like on this one? So the week is also red now. And what week would that be? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we're chewing up some time here in the daily cycle, or in the weekly cycle. Yet at the same time, again, this thing has already moved like multiples, right? So it's not surprising that it's taking a breather here. Like this little thing here is optimistic. Maybe this actually just kind of grinds out here, like kind of builds a bull flag, breaks down into an ICL at some point. At the same time, the broader uranium space is going to tell you if this is going to move. But I mean, look at this. It's consolidating. It's consolidating like you see this, where it wasn't like this move was not able to make it above this sort of zone. And so not surprising, this move is stalling out right there, which means if it can get above this zone, that's incredibly bullish. So it gives you a nice risk reward in that sense, right? Like just be patient, wait to see which way it breaks. And to the downside, right? Like you really don't want to see it below, call it 18 cents, right? That really, you have this one big day that took you from, like, what was the high? Like this day took you from 6 cents to, this day took you from 6 cents to 18 cents. So this was your big day, right? And so it's going to be interesting if we get into this range, what happens, right? So very nice risk reward here. And if you think about the monthly, what's happened? Yeah, it's just a doji, right? Like it's like doing nothing, just like, and more importantly, consolidating at the upper end of the range. That's always positive. Moves have to consolidate. And again, this is just the same thing that you saw on the daily, and again, just on the higher time frame. So we'll look at Fission Uranium. So the monthly is still inside, and the month just closed actually. So it's going to close inside. So we're going to have a double inside month then. We can also start to think about the monthly candles, right? So something like that is where we'll start, right? We'll open. Obviously, January is going to be a big month, or potentially a big month. A lot of fireworks in the broader market, possibly. And if we think about the weekly picture, right? So You could argue this is your weekly cycle low here, and so this is week 1, 2, 3, week 4 as a top, 5, 6, 7, week 8 right now. So this is not looking particularly bullish. That's good to know about. On a daily cycle level, it seems pretty clear, right, that this would have been your last daily cycle. Right, so this is interesting. So maybe it's actually still moving into a daily cycle low at this point. So that puts the weekly cycle a little bit up in the air. So this is going to be an interesting one to watch. I mean, this is obviously a bullish looking candle. The level to watch here, you really kind of need to get above is like 62 cents, right? And then, I mean, you're probably going to face some resistance around there. So really more like 65 cents. Because this was a pretty this was a gap up, right? It gapped up massively and then it just sold down, right? So it's going to be a question of like, are buyers going to show up at these levels again? Interesting. So that's Fission. That's Fission Uranium, not Fission 3.0. We just looked at Fission 3.0. What else do we want to look at? We want to look at UEC a little bit more closely. So this one is looking precarious on the daily cycle. So this is day 9, making fresh highs. So this is like really bullish, like all these green candles. So basically 8 days of green candles. So this first day was red, but then 8 days of green candles following that. We're on day 9. We're starting to get up to where we might see some resistance, some potential supply. And now it's going to be a question of when does this thing correct? Because this is going to correct at some point. I mean, Jesus, look at this thing. Like, this thing can't, like, that's not sustainable, right? Like that angle of ascent. And so, I mean, you can call that a rising bearish wedge if you want. It doesn't matter what you call it. It's an unsustainable angle of descent, right? It's going to have to correct at some point. On the weekly, we're making fresh highs on the weekly. Let me just put this on auto. And so my expectation, we get to at least week 5. So this is week 2 here. So maybe another 3 weeks of upside. Again, broader market is going to have to cooperate. See what happens as we open 2023. That obviously could pull things down, but we'll be kind of watching this and wouldn't be surprised if we get a lower low here. That's UEC. Let's look at Denison really quickly. How's that looking? Yikes. Just still coiling. This is just doing nothing. Like, nothing to report here. UUU. Ooh, this looks ugly. Yikes. So, it does look like we have an ICL. So this is week 2 of a weekly cycle. But I mean, this is all really sort of feeble move so far. So not looking great. Really need to get above at 683 level. So not much has changed since we last talked about this one. And really most of these, I think, it seems. What about URA? How's that looking? So that's interesting because the low was made back in October, and it's actually made a higher low since then. And on the monthly, still red. I mean, ultimately, you still have the possibility that the low was July, but at this point, I mean, man, this is just coiling really tightly, really a lot like Denison. So again, not much can be done but wait here for the most part. URA closing with a nice bullish hammer. Does look like we had an ICL last week. So this is probably week 1. We don't actually have a swing low yet on the weekly, so that would be very speculative. But it is still consolidating, as you can see on that monthly chart inside that box. Next gen, nice higher high there on the weekly. Obviously, the month did not close green. And most of these are going to have inside months for January, right? You can just look at the range for the December candle. That's the range that we're going to be inside, and you want to be aware of that. And on the daily cycle level, what is this one looking like? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Day 8. So this is looking much. So and notice this is much healthier than that angle of ascent that we looked at for that other one for UEC. So that's important to note, right? Like this has your little, like it has your little pullbacks, pretty like your relatively deep pullbacks, right? For like an entire day. I mean, this is even a swing high. Like this is even making a lower low, I should say. So that's the picture for, just a smattering of uranium names. Again, I'd say the picture looks murky at best, bearish at worst, especially since the broader market we know is moving into an ICL, as mentioned. And definitely take a look at those videos as I talk about in more detail about sort of price targets for broader market. Because the lower the broader market goes, the lower these stocks go, right? Because uranium stocks are stocks in the end. So we'll leave it at that for this video. Thanks for watching.